Governor Martin, go ahead, and I'll come back.
Governor.
Yeah, it just seems to me like this board should be doing everything it possibly can do to make this happen and not have our internal squabblings get in the way of this company coming when they want to use the university system as part of the one of the reasons why they're coming to Florida. I mean, isn't this what New Florida is all about? Trying to get jobs and
that.
And you know, they picked FSU. They didn't, because it's got a great film school. And I mean, I just think we ought to be encouraging everything we can, doing everything we can do to make sure that our squabbling doesn't get in the way of this thing.
Chancellor Brooks.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, and this is probably because of the lengthy but very good conversation we're having. A good place to remind people all the way back to where we started. I'm not bringing these three issues before the Board of Governors for resolution or for decision or for approval or denial. That's not why we're talking about this today. It is, A, because I've been asked to provide an update because these things came to the surface during the last public meeting that we held, and I've been asked to review them and provide you input, but not for approval or denial. Most importantly, what we are talking about is where we go from here, because, Governor Beard, you're absolutely right. No one is trying to squash entrepreneurial spirit, opportunity for greater partnership and collaboration with the not-for-profit or private sector. This is what we are trying to promote, but it's an evidence again that without an organized approach to it, you are at the mercy of random acts of opportunity, excellence, and failure. And all we're suggesting, these three being, I think, good evidence of that fact, is that as we move forward as a Board of Governors who has a constitutional responsibility to manage and organize and make certain that there is no unwarranted duplication or inefficiency, that's your constitutional obligation, that we do this in a way moving forward that won't just simply hope people are talking to one another, that won't just simply hope that people are establishing their own seat-of-the-pants approach to entrepreneurial relationships, but we do this in a way that is organized to benefit not only the institutions, but the system and the state of Florida. That's not hyperbole. I believe that. And so in these three particular cases, there are different takeaways, but they're all important to where we go from here, not just as a Board of Governors, but as a state system of universities, to make sure we're maximizing the entrepreneurial opportunities that are going to be presenting themselves along the way, that we maximize the great work and the reputations that our universities have created generally, but also within programs at the universities, film school being a great evidence of that.
Thank you, Chancellor. I'm going to have one more comment, and then we need to move on to the next item. Governor Hussaini?
Chancellor, I totally agree with you. It is our responsibility. And also the responsibility the legislators have given to us. And time, they have reminded us that we have a responsibility also to our taxpayers. I commend President Barron trying, and this is what's all about, to bringing business to Florida. But I also see a clear problem in FAU having a program with students, cost that tremendously, and then we have a program there that with some of our students from FAU move to this program, that program, and at the end of the day, it costs the taxpayers. And I agree with President FIU that this could be a bigger problem systematically for our system. And finally, I do agree with you, it needs to be looked at. If we put our head in the sand and say, oh, it's not a problem, it's a local problem, it's only a squabble, let's not worry about it, it is a problem, and I think it needs to be dealt with, and hopefully it will be dealt with that to satisfy everyone and doesn't cost the taxpayer of the state of Florida.
Governor Parker.
Governor Martin, my thoughts are that because we don't have specific regulations in place about this issue, and because I do think that it is an issue that has impact on the system, that I think that as a board we have to provide some type of direction generally. I think that if we kind of sit back and say, yeah, it is something that that has implications. So you guys go off and talk and make it work. I think that we would have accomplished nothing. I think that the reality is that the presidents probably have had some correspondence or conversations, and they haven't reached a result, and that's why we're talking about it today. So what I'm looking for the board to do is a little bit more than what the chancellor suggested. I think we need to offer some direction, because I think that, as the president has indicated, the issue is moving forward. I mean, if last Friday the city of West Palm Beach appropriated dollars in support of the program, by the time we meet in January, several other decisions would have already been made about the issue. And I think that we need to either kind of come together as a board and direct the chancellor as to what he'd like for him to do in assistance to work with the presidents, or provide some other direction other than just encouraging them to talk in order to kind of deal with the issue. Additionally, specifically as it relates to this idea of, I'm probably not using the right terminology, but the certification of the program, I think that's a separate item that has to be carved out and addressed by one of our committees. So I'm looking to my right to the chancellor, is that either strategic planning or academic affairs that kind of needs to specifically look at the issue. And I don't have an answer. I mean, I just know that it's a problem that is system-wide, that may change how we do business, and I think it's something that needs to be referred to one of those committees, Frank, to determine how we feel about the whole idea of the certification of the programs, and while partnering with a private entity, and what should happen with that. So I'm asking you to make some kind of committee assignment either to Governor Martin or to Governor Duncan as to how we deal with that particular issue. I'd ask, as a board, if we could offer some direction beyond, President Saunders and President Barron, you guys go off and talk about how we want to deal with this particular issue, because we're not being realistic if we don't. I mean, so is it that we really want to encourage that if there's a way for FAU to be involved in this, Dr. Barron, we'd ask you to see if they can, and then in the meantime, we're going to be addressing the whole idea of the certification. I mean, that's a little bit more direct. I just need you guys to understand that us just saying this is a great idea, you guys go and make it work, I'm not sure we're going to be solving anything. So, Dr. Barron?
I am more than happy to follow that guidance, or whatever guidance is suggested. It is my understanding that Digital Domain did go and meet with the faculty members at FAU at some time ago, and it is, my promise to turn around, if it's your guidance, to go back to Digital Domain and say, look, the system has capabilities here, and it will cause friction in this state if we don't look for mechanisms to collaborate and involve other universities. Again, I can't tell them what to do. I mean, they're perfectly capable of going up and setting the program by themselves without blinking an eye, or deciding that NYU, which is, a very highly ranked film program, is a equally good partner. I can't tell them, but I can certainly say, beyond talk and walk and try to work it out, that that it would make a significant difference to this state and to the Board of Governors to promote collaboration that goes beyond FSU.
That's a very good jump-off point to your point. I think the reality of this thing is having FAU and FSU continue to talk is wonderful and appropriate, but without engaging Digital Domain, and like many, I hope they come and I hope they flourish, just as I hope Burnham and Scripps and Torrey Pines would come and flourish. And the reality is that whether it's Digital Domain or the Scripps Institute, you cannot force anything on these folks. They are not-for-profits and private entities who have the opportunity and the privilege of deciding who they are going to partner with. Having said that, I think in terms of what I've been suggesting by way of better organization to all of this going forward, we would be remiss as a system if we did not provide them the fabric of what we do and how we do it, to see if there are other partnership opportunities that might exist. At the end of the day, they will have to decide, and they can. And President Barron is absolutely correct. They're not a part of the state university system. They're a private provider. But I think the point is that in hearing where we are with this, the conversations, and again, looking at the opportunities, we organize this in a way to make sure that every possibility is provided so that people can make well-informed and good decisions going forward to foster good economic development opportunity for the state, educational and economic development. So I would say we engage all three parties in this continued conversation, the two universities and digital domain.
And just to add a fourth, I think that the Chancellor, you need to be involved in those discussions as well, so you can make sure that we have opportunities not only for FAU and Florida State to be involved, but also open the door for other universities as well. Because again, I think this is a tremendous economic opportunity for the state. Although we can't direct digital domain in terms of what they need to do, but if we come with one voice saying, yes, we want you in our state, and we're willing to do whatever possible to make sure that happens. That's the message that we need to make sure they get.
And here's the buffet of opportunities that the state university system can provide to make you help you be successful, whether it's film, whether it's biotech, whether it's space and aerospace, whether it's alternative energy. That's how you organize something to provide the greatest partnership opportunities so that these private enterprises can be as successful as they want to be when they look to move in or locate in our state.
Okay, I thought we were going to be running ahead of schedule, but that's a little unusual for this committee. You have one more item.
Yes, sir, I do.
Want to update? Let's try to make this.
I do, and I will move through this as quickly as I can. The last one is Florida A&M University and the University of West Florida. Florida A&M University has received appropriations over the past few legislative sessions funding a rural diversity healthcare initiative totaling more than $11 million. The appropriations language specifically identifies Crestview, Florida as the location for this initiative. And the 2010 language specifically references pharmacy, public health, occupational therapy, physical therapy, and other health-related programs. Board staff have been actively engaged in conversations with both the University of West Florida and Florida A&M University on development of this important site. The two presidents and their academic staff did meet on Tuesday with board staff in our offices in Tallahassee and came to the following general agreements. One, UWF supports Florida A&M University's proposal to offer the PharmD in Crestview and would very much like to work towards an articulation agreement for UWF undergraduate students. Again, this is a great example of how two great universities can work together and collaborate together, not only for their benefit, but for the benefit, at the end of the day, greater benefit of the students that they'll serve. Two, President Ammons and President Bentz have asked the academic leaders from their respective universities to work together to develop a plan for other possible academic programming in the areas of health science, health administration, and nursing. The end goal is to foster a coordinated approach for integrating the FAMU Crestview site into the existing state university system structure and distribution of academic programs, while at the same time avoiding any unnecessary duplication of effort. In accordance with the board's regulation on site approval, and this is important going forward, President Ammons has submitted a request for site approval to our office, which is a requirement under our existing regulation when a university is looking to set up an instructional site. Board staff have completed the initial review of the site proposal and provided Florida A&M with feedback requesting clarification for some sections of the proposal, including planned program offerings. It is our intention, if all can be worked out, and this is an important subset of this conversation, not just the collaboration between UWF and FAMU on the academic programs, but on the regulatory requirement to seek approval as an instructional site, to let you all know as members of the board that this will be coming back to you for proposed action on the issue of the instructional site. It is our hope that we will have this on the January agenda for your consideration as we continue to work out the issues relative to the construction, and I should say reconstruction and renovation of the facility in Crestview, and also continue to work on the issue of academic programs prior to the January meeting. So we're going to be working diligently to that end. I cannot guarantee you that we will have resolved the academic programming issues by January, but it is our intent to work to try to do that. But we will certainly be in a position by January to update you on where we are with those conversations, so that we can continue to expedite the Crestview project for the benefit not only of the system but the people that it will serve. So to that end, I want to thank both presidents again in this case for continuing, and their staff for continuing to work with us on this initiative. I'll end all of this, unless you all have any questions, or unless the presidents on this one have any further insight that they'd like to provide, or amendment to anything that I've said, to again remind people that all of this is not only fascinating and not meant to be a marriage counseling session on the issue of communication. That's not what we intended to do here. Nor in any way, shape, or form has this been meant to call people on the carpet for lack of communication. Most importantly, this was a necessary update, but also a peek forward at where we need to consider that we are going as a system. That's why it's important to the Board of Governors and the universities today, as we continue to try to better organize our system without squashing collaboration, without impeding entrepreneurial opportunity and economic development possibilities, without saying to a university, you cannot consider moving into an area in closer proximity to another university, or working with the public or private sector for greater possibilities in collaboration. All of this is just to remind all of us that as we move forward, it is about how we do this in an articulated, organized, and an efficient fashion. That is all, to enhance what this system can bring not only to the universities but to the entire state of Florida. So, Mr. Chairman, again, I'm wide open for questions. I know the presidents are as well before we close this one out.
Okay, I would ask the presidents if they have any comments. President Pence or Ammons?
Well, I think the larger issue here is, like the Chancellor says, is communication. But the larger issue really is a political one. When legislators decide they want to establish a site of an educational site for one of the SUS institutions, what kind of communication should they do? I think the tension between, or the relationship between the legislature and the Board of Governors is at issue here, not just President Ammons and my institution. We all know that it happens across the state, and I think that is the larger issue for the board to think about and to consider. It happens all the time. It's happened twice in my region, in my service area, once in Panama City and now in Crestview. We have a very small region population-wise, very poor, very terribly spread out, without a major population center. And the kind of politics that have been played have been not taken the Board of Regents before and the Board of Governors now into consideration. And I would say that that is the larger issue for you all to talk about. I don't know how to resolve it, but in the time when the Crestview Center was being conceived, it was sort of an anti-UWF thing, and trying to harm the university. And I know it happens. I know the political game and process, but it's something that you should be in charge of, not them.
Okay, thank you. President Ammons?
I think the the Chancellor described what we have done very accurately. We have come together to talk about the development of the Crestview Center. We were in no way a part of any kind of scheme to harm the University of West Florida. We were invited to bring a set of programs to that part of the state to enhance opportunities, and we accepted the invitation. What I wanted to reinforce, based on what the Chancellor said, is that there have been 2 appropriations. And we are now in the process of selecting a contractor to complete the renovation on the facilities. Those funds need to be drawn down, or we stand the possibility of those sitting out there that something may happen. The PharmD program, which has no duplication with the University of West Florida, was always the first program that we would implement. And we really need to be able to go ahead, get the building renovated. The design work has been going on for over a year, and we have a time frame that we have pretty much committed to for the city of Crestview to actually give us the building. This 40,000 square foot facility was donated by the city of Crestview to Florida A&M University for us to provide these programs. It is our hope that we will be able to begin the actual implementation of this program in fall of 2012, which is outlined in the proposal that we have given to the Chancellor. However, it takes, of course, over a year in order to complete the renovations. And so that is the urgency attached to this. And I think with the resolution of issues around pharmacy and the commitment to work together with the University of West Florida on the other programs, I would think that we would have now major obstacles out of the way so that we can begin the actual implementation of this program and the fulfilling of our commitment to the city of Crestview and to the region of North Florida. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you, Chancellor, for giving us an update on these 3 items. And again, I think communication to make sure that everyone is communicating with each other is key and critical moving forward. Chair Parker.
I'll defer to, yes, ma'am.
Thank you. And Governor Martin, I need to make sure I understand, because again, this is all time sensitive, and I want to make sure that we're on the same page as far as, I know that Dr. Benz and Dr. Ammons and the Chancellor have met and kind of discussed some of the issues, and I know that the appropriation is in place, and I need to make sure that, or I would like to ensure that we're clear enough that it is moving forward and you guys are on the same page, because I understand what I'm hearing the President or President Ammons say is that, you know, they're anticipating that they're going to start the renovations. So I don't know if I kind of want to make sure that we're on the same page here.
I was actually just going to say, I think, where do we go from here? I think the issue of PharmD is working itself out to each satisfaction. There's obviously still more work to be done on that relative to what that collaboration could look like. But I would strongly recommend that in the time we have between now and January, which is when we hope to bring this back for board action in terms of instructional site approval, that we use that time as efficiently as possible to continue the conversations on the other programming. I know this is a busy time of year, but I don't want to slow down that process of the instructional site. At the same time, I think once the site is approved, there simply by its very nature will be less urgency to continue the conversations about correlation, collaboration, what have you. So I would really press both institutions to efficiently use what limited time we have between now and the January meeting, hopefully coming back at that meeting and not only looking at approval of the instructional site, but having further positive update on the additional academic programming possibilities that exist between the two institutions. Again, I can't declare that they will be complete by January. I just believe it's in everybody's best interest that we go as far as we can in the time we have remaining between now and January to do as much as we can.
commitment to get this done because with the schedule that we have for the renovation of the building, and also the need to draw the funds down in this kind of fiscal environment, you have my commitment to get that done so that we're not in a position of losing those funds to do a lot of good in this region that we have made a commitment to. And of course, the city of Crestview and the legislators from that region of the state have made a commitment to. And again, I think the conversations that we have had resolved the major issue with pharmacy. Clearly, there's no duplication with the PharmD program. It has always been the first program that we would start, and the other programs were always going to come later because with the appropriation that we have for the operations of the site, we don't have the funds to fully implement all of the other programs, but
Perhaps,
we do
I'm
have
sorry,
the
Mr.
funds for pharmacy.
Perhaps then, if it is simply going to be because of a timing issue, impossible to have all the academic programming issues resolved by January, at the very least, what we may do is work to put together a process to assure that whatever time it does take, that it is an ongoing conversation, dialogue, that it is not simply left to chance going forward. Maybe that's the best way to use the limited time we have remaining. So.
But to move towards approval of the site in January so that we can deliver the PharmD program.
Yeah, I'm still talking the same thing.
Okay.
My point there is January will rapidly be here. And if we cannot accomplish decision-making on the academic programming coordination, perhaps in the limited time we have, we can at least create a template of process for how we'll move forward ongoing with that and not just leave it to chance moving forward after January, is my point. Does that help? So it is still my intention to have this thing agended for the January meeting is the bottom line. I just don't want to lose the urgency of these continued conversations about collaboration either before that or especially after that.
Okay, Dr. Brands.
But on the other hand, I don't want to let the urgency drive what we do. PharmD is fine. What was a surprise to us was the long list of other programs, almost all of which we offer. And where we're going to collaborate on is what is duplication and what isn't. And so it was a great surprise to our institution when the language came out with a long list of programs that, in addition to PharmD. It was just a surprise. It happens in the legislature all the time. And my question is, part of the question is, does that authorize, how strong is that when it's in a budget bill, does that really, what kind of power does that have into who teaches what and who offers what programs? These are larger issues that are played out in Crestview right now. And so I certainly do understand the time and the need to spend the money. But we will begin conversations, of course, but the other programs will need to collaborate on and get some sort of basic issues. What level are we talking about? Who has authority to do what, where, that when it comes to the legislature, when it comes to the Board of Governors. And we'll work through it. You know, and if we need your help, we'll come to you and we'll ask you for your help and say, well, what do you think? And if they don't know, then we'll make it up.
Right?
And then see what you think.
There is a finer point here that should not be lost.
Yeah.
And that is the fact that it is legislative language
Yes.
that has created
Yes.
the potential implementation of these programs.
That's right.
Not the institutions
Absolutely.
and not the state university system. And we are going to have to work through
Yes.
that. My hope is in the future, especially after the statutory rewrite
Yeah.
and the settlement agreement, we're going to see a lot less of that because I think, again, the system has the ability to meet the needs of the people in the Crestview area programmatically and academically without having defined programs in law.
Right.
So we're sort of still with one foot in the old world and one
know,
in
it is
the
the
world
old
of the
world.
new.
Right.
President Evans.
Chancellor, just one last thing. As President Bentz has said, the Farm D is not an issue. The commitment that we have to deliver that program coincides with this construction schedule. And what I would hope is that the goal would be that when we come back in January, that the approval of the educational site, which will allow us to let the contract for construction, would be our goal.
Understood.
Thank you.
I understand.
Thank you. And again, you have my commitment, President Bentz, as we have said, that those other program issues, that we'll work through those together.
Okay, Governor Stovers.
Well, that's coming from me, and that is that, yes, Chancellor, you're right in what you're saying. Communication, yes, but we need to know the whole story. We talked legislatively, we talked about some other things. It doesn't always appear what you first see. You need the whole story. It's not a quarter or 25 cents, President Rosenberg. What it is a little boy sitting on the steps crying, and the man says, "Why are you crying?" "Well, I was watching my father hang a picture in our home, and he hit his finger with the hammer."
Yes, sir, and I promise I will end here. Mr. Chairman, I promise.
I will end here and perhaps the conversation by simply ending where we started and reminding people these were simply three illustrations of a much larger set of issues. This board will be tackling going forward in the creation of a regulation that has to do with how we implement campuses, sites, instructional centers, how people engage with one another when looking to work across systems and across the state collaboratively, efficiently. So again, I thank all 6 presidents for working with us in this update today. More, I thank you for your continued efforts and what you're trying to accomplish. And again, don't want anybody to believe that this was a waste of time. This was important going forward for the system, not just important to the institutions. And these conversations, I think, will pay great dividend as we move forward in the creation of an organized approach to these things in the future. And I really thank you, Mr. Chairman, for taking this one on.
Governor Tripp.
As an aside, I think this points out, as Vice Chair of the Legislative Committee, this points out that when you go to the legislature and they have an idea and you help them with that idea and you take yourself down the road that you get something put in law that you know is going to be an issue when you come back here with your fellow institutions, you don't help the system. And at some point there was probably a conversation that got expanded. That's when we need to make sure that what we're doing is we're not moving to that next step so that suddenly we find ourselves between a rock and a hard spot. And I think we could have cured that issue way back by further communication when that came up, bringing the fellow institution into it and saying we have an opportunity here. How can we work this out so that it benefits both of us?
Thank you. Any other comments? Governor Parker, did you have any closing comments on this item? Are you okay?
If I said yes, we were okay, you would like be surprised. I just want to say, I guess just thank you again to the 6 presidents for working with us. It is, I guess, a clarification of some of the issues that we're going to need to address as the Board of Governors to ensure that we kind of deal with some of the glitches that we may have, and also ensure that we have regulations or rules in place to ensure that we don't end up at the same place. where we started on some of these matters. So just thank you so much for the spirit of cooperation of our presidents. I know that in some instances this is going to take your continued working together in order for us to reach a resolution. Know that we're here. We're not looking to basically dive into your business as much as we're looking to ensure that we are ensuring the coordination within the within the state university system. So.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item number 5, the Strategic Planning Committee's work plan. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it this morning, but I would like to call the committee members' attention to the work plan and also the other board members as well. Take a look at it. It lays out what the items that we will be addressing over the next several meetings. So take the time to take a look at it. If you have any specific, particular comments, please let staff know. So we can communicate, because it is our intent to have the strategic planning process in, say, a year from now, approximately. So we will have a formal strategic plan for the system. So take a look at the work program. If you have any comments, let staff know. And with that, Madam Chair, unless there's no other comments, Governor Rood, you have any comments closing as Vice Chair? Okay. With that, meeting ends. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll start with the Board of Governors meeting.